that I might wholly face one day may see. Keep me from secret sin, reign but my soul within, pure in heart, help me to be. So let's have our Bibles open. Let's have our Bibles open to the book of Ruth. We are beginning chapter 3 today. So let me tell you what's going to happen this morning so that you will be prepared. The Levy safety team has been very proactive about things we need to know to be confident in the safety things that happen around here. And we're not just talking about we're not just talking about people we might be afraid of. We're talking about things like what if there's a fire? What if there is a medical emergency? Because we have had medical emergencies happen. So the safety team has been going around to various classes and taking about 5 minutes to talk about what to do in case of an emergency, in case of a crisis. So I'm going to start class at 9:30. Vince Parker's going to come in, and he's going to speak for about 5 minutes, and he's going to go over that for us. Then I'll get back up and close out the class with what we're doing. So we are doing Ruth by text and by topic. And we always begin with the text. We go through that in fairly quick fashion. Then we go back through our text and pull out topics. There's so much stuff in the book of Ruth that is relevant for what goes on in our world today and our feelings, the things that we deal with. And so we'll be doing some of that today. As a matter of fact, our topics are older women teaching younger women, rest or security, which that's a good providential thing. We're going to talk about secure and have our security, our safety team comes by. We're going to talk about being well. What does it mean to be well? To live well. Then we're going to do a little bit of topical talking on planning versus scheming. Planning is good. Scheming is not so good. Then we'll talk about hygiene a little bit. That's a good thing to pay attention to. Timing. We do need to be a people who can read a room and know when to speak up and when not to speak up, when to make a move, when to hold back. Bold moves. We have Ruth initiating a bold move. So there is a time to be bold, time to initiate, time to take a risk. So we'll be talking about that. And then finally, at the end, there is the word trust. We also, and here is our, by the way, if you, we do have, anybody is interested, we're well into it, so I didn't pass them around this morning. But we do have a schedule of what we're doing. It's not a class book, but it is a schedule of what we're doing. And we actually are supposed to today be on just a word study. We were going to stop in the book of Ruth and do a word study on some very particular and important, heavily weighted words that appear throughout the book of Ruth. But we got behind because of a snow event, so we're combining a couple of weeks. And we will hopefully get around to that word study and talk about Hesed and also about Redeemer. Those are two big words in the book of Ruth. So let's jump in with our text. I'll do it without glasses because I felt every... No. Lance, please. Ruth chapter 3 and verse 1, we're doing through verse 5 this morning. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you? Is not Boaz our relative, with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Wash, therefore, and anoint yourself, and put on your cloak, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. But when he lies down, observe the place where he lies. Then go and uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do." And Ruth replied, "All that you say, I will do." So there's the reading. Let's do a little bit of catch up. We don't have to go all the way through what's happened with Ruth and Naomi and Boaz. Most people are familiar with the story, but Ruth is dedicated to her mother-in-law. Their husbands have died. All the men in the family are dead. There's Naomi, who is the mother-in-law. There's Ruth, the Moabite daughter-in-law. They are in Bethlehem without visible means of support. So Ruth has been going during harvest season to the fields around that were being harvested, and that's the way that the poor and the immigrant are taken care of. According to the law, the Torah, the farmers of Judah were supposed to leave a part of their field for those who were poor to come in behind them. That's what she's been doing. She attracted the attention of Boaz, who was very kind to her. And so when Ruth had returned after her first day, she had like 5 gallons of rice and a really nice leftover lunch that Boaz had made sure happened. She had his invitation to come back and harvest in his fields so that she would have some safety and some security. He was afraid that being a lone female foreigner, that she might run into some problems with people, but he was going to be he was going to make sure that didn't happen on his farm with the people who worked for him. So Boaz has been kind. That's it. We'll talk about that in a bit. Boaz has been kind, and after that first day, when Ruth reports to her mother-in-law, "I was so fortunate today. I ended up in a field of a man who was kind and who watched out for me, made sure that I had more. That I even had lunch with his crew. And here's the leftovers, and he made sure that I had good places to do harvesting." And so I want to. There's all the catch up in the story, but we didn't have time last week. I wanted last week to do this last line. It's a little thing, but I didn't want to skip over it entirely. The last line of chapter 2 is, "And Ruth lived with her mother-in-law." And it might be, if we were just reading that, we'd say, well, yeah, of course. But what we want to remember is that Ruth had to make a full commitment with some sacrifice to accompany Naomi, her mother-in-law, to Bethlehem. And Ruth had spoken those wonderful words, "Where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Nothing but death will separate me from you." So to have this line in there, "and she lived with her mother-in-law," is a reaffirmation of Ruth's integrity, that Ruth is following through on the vow that she made. And you and I know that those words of Ruth are used in many a marriage ceremony about where you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Nothing but death will separate between you and me. And yet some time passes and that vow goes unfulfilled. Well, what we have just with Ruth is the Spirit, in putting together the book of Ruth. He wants us to know that Ruth is this person of integrity who follows through on the vows that she makes. So she lives there. It's been difficult circumstances. It seems like things are turning a corner, but Ruth is still right there with Naomi. And yes, Naomi then, as we open chapter 3, Naomi does say, hey, it looks like some things are turning around for us. Remember that Naomi, a name that means pleasant, had told her friends, you should call me Mara, bitter, instead of pleasant, because my circumstances have been so bad. But as chapter 3 opens, the story in the book of Ruth is taking a good turn, and Naomi is embracing that good turn. She sees some hope and celebrates that, and now has some advice for Ruth and what to do. So let's just go through the text. It's a short one this morning, these 5 verses. Then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, my daughter, and it's nice that she calls it, that's these days, in-laws, it's not, maybe it's exaggerated, but there are lots of in-law jokes. In-laws sometimes have some tension. And so we make efforts to go the other way on that, lessen the tension within in-law relationships. So much so that oftentimes today, maybe more than hearing the phrase daughter-in-law, you hear daughter-in-love. People like to use that to say we're getting along well. And here we have this situation. Naomi has Ruth with her, and she refers to her here not as daughter-in-law, but my daughter. And so that's just a nice thing we want to mention. And Naomi says, should I not seek rest for you? And here's how we see that the story in the book of Ruth is turning. Because I want you to go back to Ruth chapter 1 and verse 9. When Naomi was still in Moab, her husband had died. Her 2 sons that had married these Moabite women had died. And she felt bitter and empty about all of that. She was going to leave Moab and return to Judah, but she released her daughters from any obligation of caring for her because she felt like she was so empty she had nothing to offer. And this is the way that she put it back in chapter 1 and verse 9. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. And she went on to say, I can't provide that rest. My husband is dead. I have no properties. I have no land. I have no money. I have no support. And there is, my life is in terrible circumstances. And if you came with me, you would just join my tragic circumstances. Your husband has died. You need to seek other things. So I hope that you have a good settling place, a good place of security in front of you, but I can't provide that. Is what Naomi said back in chapter 1 and verse 9. And so Orpah did stay in Moab, but Ruth made that fabulous vow that she was going to stay with Naomi, and together they would work it out. And now, finally, Naomi is saying, I can see how we can settle into a place of security and rest, and I'll do what I can to provide that for you. You're my daughter. And I'm going to see that you have this decent life that is ahead of you. Before she thought she couldn't provide it. Now she's thinking, well, maybe I can. I'm going to seek rest for you, and seek rest for you so that it may be well with you. And that's more than well-wishing. She's looking for an opportunity to be utilized to bring, they've got some things missing in their life. wholeness of life needs to come. So I'm going to find rest. I'm going to seek rest for you. I want things to be well with you. I couldn't provide that before, but since you come back and report that things have gone well today in the field of this man named Boaz, as you have named, then maybe things are getting better. Because, in verse 2, is not Boaz our relative with whose young women you were? See, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. We're going to get to a word study about Redeemer. Boaz is going to be a kinsman redeemer, a relative redeemer for this family. But right now, she doesn't refer to Boaz as the redeeming relative. This is a more general term. This is a man who is near to us in family relation. When we were first introduced to Boaz, we were told that he was related. He was an Ephraimite, like Elimelech, who was the husband of Naomi, was an Ephrathite. So with Ruth reporting that she's met this man Boaz, who has shown her favor, then she says this Boaz is a relative of ours, the one with whom you were working with today with his young women. And apparently some time has been passing. Ruth has been living with Naomi, as Boaz himself had suggested. She's been continuing to work in his fields, and we have gotten from the harvesting time into the winnowing time. So she says that Boaz is going to be winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. This is harvest was a super busy time. You work long hours in the day, harvest during the day, winnow, separate the husks from the kernel at night. And so it was made for a very long, very tiring day. So here we have Boaz working an evening job at the end of a long day. He'll be on the threshing floor. And so Naomi tells Ruth, wash therefore and anoint yourself and put on your cloak and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Naomi is giving some advice. Remember, Ruth is a Moabitess. Even though Ruth had said to Naomi, your people will be my people, she's having to learn her way in that. She doesn't know she doesn't know the people. Even though the countries were not far apart and were related, there would be different customs and ways of doing things. So Naomi can supply that kind of knowledge. And one thing she tells Ruth here is to clean herself up, make herself look nice. But this may be more than that. It may be more than that because she is washing and anointing and putting on her cloak. Perhaps up until this time, Ruth had been wearing her mourning clothes. Naomi's husband had died, but Ruth's husband had died too. And so Ruth has been wearing the garb of the widow and wearing her mourning clothes. And so perhaps what we have Naomi saying is, we're going to change clothes from the clothes that are the mourning clothes to the clothes that say, I'm available clothes. And so maybe that's what's going on. But Ruth is at least being told, in this case, to put her best foot forward by looking her best is what she is advised here. And then Ruth is to go. Now she's been harvesting in the field of Boaz, but winnowing. One of the things reported in chapter 2. After doing the harvesting, she would do the winnowing herself. Well, the winnowing for especially the person who would own the farm would be for the great harvest they had would be a pretty big deal with lots of workers. Sometimes a community thing, so there would be lots of people around, and they made it fun and celebratory. because it was harvest, but it was also hard work. So, so, uh, sh- so Ruth was told by Naomi, "I want you to go to the place where the winnowing is going on." They had places built for that, shared those things. Go to the place where the winnowing is taking place, but don't uh, be there. Don't draw so much attention to yourself. We want to get to present to Boaz in just the right way and at just the right time. So go there and be around, but just be one of the people there when you first arrive until the man has finished eating and drinking. So we're not gonna bother him until he's finished his work, he's fed, he's ready to relax, things are more casual, and then, verse 4, when he lies down, and sometimes those harvest and winnowing days were so long, threshing floors out, that the workers would just sleep there. But you would be around a lot of people. There would be a lot of people around, except when you were ready to go to sleep, you would find some little more private area, a little bit away from the crowd. So don't bother Boaz while he's working, but after he's done work, after he's had food and drink, and he goes down to just watching and see where he goes, and then go where he is, uncover his feet. We're going to talk about that. Lie down, and Naomi says, he will tell you what to do. And Ruth says, all that you do, I will say. So as I said at the very beginning, maybe some of you have come into class since we first started the class, we have to say in our circumstances that all of that advice that Naomi gives Ruth can sound a bit sketchy to us, but all the personalities involved here have already shown us that they do not have sketchy characters. So we're going to trust that these actions, this advice that Naomi was giving to Ruth, was appropriate to their culture and also was lawful and was respectful of the law and of the nature of God. And Boaz himself is, we've already learned, has been a man of the law. He's followed the law in allowing the foreigners to glean his field. He's been kind to his workers. He is what when we were introduced to him, we were told he was a worthy man, and worthy perhaps in wealth, but also in character. So this sounds, as a matter of fact, every time that I look into the book of Ruth, I think I'm going to find some commentary somewhere that will take some of these phrases, like she uncovered his feet, and I'm going to find out that, oh yeah, that phrase appears several times over in this area, and this is exactly what that means, and this is how it, no, you don't find that. So we are going on just really a little bit of information and having some phrases that we don't quite know what it means. Sometimes that might make us jump to suspicions, but in this case it shouldn't, because of the people who are involved. So let's talk about some of the topics that we have run into here. And as I mentioned before, we're looking for Vince Parker to come in the door. He's going to come in about 9:30, but we'll get into the topics and give him a little time and then jump back into the topics. Older women teaching younger women. You know, Ruth had given so much to Naomi. What did empty, that's the way she described herself, what did empty, bitter Naomi have to give to Ruth? And as we have already mentioned, in Naomi's view, at least in the very beginning, I have nothing for her. I have nothing to do. I can't help. I don't know how I'm going to take care of myself. So I have nothing that's going to help you to advance in life. That was the idea at one time. But as chapter 3 opens, and Ruth begins to make the report and mentions she's been in the field of a man named Boaz, lights start to go off in Naomi's head, and what Naomi has to give is that she can guide Ruth into the customs and the laws and the appropriateness of Jewish ways, and not just of Jewish ways, but she is a generation beyond Ruth. She has some life experiences that Ruth doesn't have. So she has. This is what she has to give. She has from her life and from her experiences. It does happen that in the book of Titus, chapter 2, sometimes when we read our Bibles, it's difficult to be politically correct, but take the good things. Titus chapter 2, in verse 3. Older women, Titus chapter 2 and verse 3. Older women likewise are to be reverent in behavior, not slanderers or slaves to much wine. They are to teach what is good, and so train the young women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled, pure, working at home, kind, submissive to their husbands, that the word of God may not be reviled. So the older women are teaching the younger women how to happily and worthily fulfill some roles in their culture and society. And so but it comes by wisdom and experience. That's our first topic. Next we're going to talk about that resting place. But Vince is here, and he's ready to present.
I'm one of your members on the safety team. This morning I want to kind of have us thinking about safety in the congregation, safety in coming in and out of the different buildings on campus here. Does everybody know what you'd have to do if you had to evacuate this building right now? Good answer. Basically what we do is we try to evacuate. If you look at as you're coming in the building, there are evacuation plans on the wall. As you leave today, after this class is over, kind of go out in the assembly there, go out into the foyer, and look at where your evacuation areas are. The evacuation area for everyone in the church is behind the Bob. Everybody know where the Bob is? Building out back. We're going to meet in the grass out there. If we have to get kids and grandkids, the child care providers, the nursery folks are going to get them. We have these big strollers that they can put 10 or 15 infants in, wheel them out to that area, and you'll pick up your kids or grandkids out there. Elderly individuals, if you need a wheelchair, you don't move as fast as some of the younger folks in the congregation, let us know. Tell somebody to get me a wheelchair. We have wheelchairs stationed around the assembly. We can get you out of here. If you have bad weather, where do we meet for bad weather? Where are we going to evacuate to? There's a hallway behind the baptismal area here at the back of the building. We're going to line everybody up in the hallway and get as many people as we can. This is in case of a tornado or severe weather. Here's the elephant in the room, active shooter. Everybody familiar with what an active shooter is? Y'all know in the news the last 10, 15 years there have been a lot of churches that's been attacked and targeted for violence. Last one, the guy tried to drive a truck through the church. Luckily, one of the safety team members shot him and ended that pretty quickly. On the mention of firearms and carrying, we have a church policy as far as concealed carry holders. If you carry during your normal duties, you're a sheriff, DEA, FBI, parole officer, security, armed security, stuff like that, you can carry in the building. Me and the safety team members, we really don't want to know. All we want you to do if something happens during event is to get you and your family out as safely as you can. 3 things you do during an active shooter. First is you're going to run. If you can run, run. If you can't run, hide. If you can't hide, we need you to fight. Fighting could be getting this microphone stand and hitting upside the head, whatever you need to do to save your life and the others in that room. Get out of there. Assembly as big as this, we'd ask that you try to evacuate as quick as possible. Let's just say the person came in and went up the elevator and started shooting upstairs. Y'all need to evacuate as quick as you can out of this area here. Does everybody know where the first aid kits are in the building? Or fire extinguishers? First aid kits are right over here at the coffee bar. There's also an AED machine, automatic electric defibrillator. Anybody here know how to use one? We have one hand over here. The good thing about the AED, it will talk you through how to use it. It will tell you where to put the pads at on the individual, and it is very loud. And if you cross the pads up, it'll also tell you pads in the wrong place, switch them. Then it'll tell you charging, please stand back. And after you stand back, and it's going to charge it, and it's going to charge that body. So if you have any questions for anybody in the security team, don't hesitate to contact myself, John, or if you see the guy out there in the crosswalk, you got a question, don't hesitate to give us an answer. Any questions for me right now before I go? Cecil, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
We appreciate our safety team. They think ahead, they meet, they discuss, they come up with good procedures, they get those communicated. That's one of the big deals, and we're glad that Vince was here to communicate that today. And, you know, one of the things that we notice in the book of Ruth is providence. We're going to actually, when the last lesson in the book of Ruth is just going to be a lesson on providence. We've already had the instance where Ruth, as the Bible reported, happened upon the field of Boaz. Well, she didn't just happen on the field of Boaz. God had his finger in that. Well, here we are doing our topics. We had our safety team come in, and our next topic has to do with the safety, security, wellness of life of Ruth and Naomi. There were the two words that were involved in that. Naomi says to Ruth, "Should I not seek rest for you?" And depending on what Bible translation you have, the word that's there might be security. Not necessarily the kind of security that we're talking about, weather events and fires and those kinds of things, although that's included. But just the security of knowing that you have a life that is well settled, and you have means of support, you have shelter, you have adequate clothing, you know where your next meal is coming from. You know, we live in an age of anxiety. No, we may not think about people who lived more than 1,000 years before Christ living in an age of anxiety, but they had some anxieties, they had some worries, they had some difficult circumstances. And what Naomi wishes for her, as she calls her daughter, Ruth, is the same thing that we want for our children. We want them to have a secure, confident, restful place in life where they feel good, they feel safe, they have shelter, they have clothing, and those sorts of things. And so that's what Naomi is talking about when she says, "Should I not seek rest for you, that it may be well with you?" Here's just an interesting little word thing. In the book of Genesis, chapter 8 and verse 9, that's the Noah and the ark story. At the end of the rains, Noah had sent out a raven that didn't return because they're rather scavenging birds. So in verse 8 of chapter 8 in Genesis, he sends out a dove, and then here's what is said in verse 9 about that dove. But the dove found, get this phrase, no place to set her foot. And she returned to him to the ark, for the waters were still on the face of the whole earth. That phrase, found no place to set her foot, that's the same wording as Naomi telling Ruth, "I want you to have a place to set your foot. I want you to be settled, restful, happy, secure, confident, and well." When I first came to Levy, Levy, I found in the youth group, knows more contemporary songs than I knew. No, I'd been to camp all my life and knew all the camp songs, but I didn't know them all apparently. And so I remember getting here, visiting the youth room. Marlon Jackson was still here at that time, and Marlon was leading the singing, and he sang a song that I had never heard before, and it just a phrase in there, just took note of it, just seemed to, it was a phrase that jumped out at me. And so this past weekend, here in this building, in this room, among other places in the building, we were having the National Urban Ministry Conference. And so Marlon was here to lead some singing, and he led that song. And it is a song that turned out to be an Amy Grant song. But here's the wording of that song. The Lord has a will, and I have a need to follow that will, to humbly be still, to rest in it, nest in it, fully be blessed in it, following my Father's will. And it was that phrase, to nest in it. You know, that was the phrase that jumped out at me at the time. But when we have this, this is the kind of life, and it's not just physical life, but spiritual life. This is what Naomi wants for Ruth. Ruth has said, your God will be my God. And Ruth is finding her way in that. So the Lord has a will, and he has a way, and he takes care of us. And a prayer for one another is that we will follow that will, live in it, nest in it, fully be blessed in it. And that be the place where, this is where we can set our foot and be safe, happy, and well. There's that word, well. And when Jesus healed a lot of people, he was making them well. But well is also an emotion that we have. It is well with my soul. Things are in a good spot, and I am joyful and happy about that. So that's what Naomi wanted for Ruth, and those are good prayers to pray for one another, that each of us have rest, that we're well, we have security, we have safety in life, and we're advancing our life in a good way. And then there's that topic about planning versus scheming, because it does, we're looking sideways at that advice that Naomi is giving to Ruth. Now, you put on your prettiest clothes, and you go to where Boaz is, but don't bother him. Wait until he's finished his work, and he's got his tummy full, and he has had his fill of wine, and then you have all of that, and we have to think about what I call planning versus scheming. Scheming seeks to deceive somehow, to exploit in some way. But planning is not bad. The Bible tells us to be as wise as serpents, but harmless as doves. So it's wise to make plans and follow through on those. On the hygiene topic, we mentioned that Ruth was coming out of mourning, but here while she was putting her best foot forward, it may be that she also was putting aside mourning clothes in order to put on availability clothes for the Levirate marriage that we have talked about, where a relative, and that's why Boaz is a relative takes care of widows in the family by taking them into his own household, even to the supplying of children that bear the progeny of the man who died, the man in the family who died and didn't leave descendants. But again, we want to note things like first impressions are important, and whatever task is at our hands, we want to make ourselves appropriate for the task. And then there's timing. Most of Naomi's instruction and advice to Ruth in this passage had to do with timing. We have a phrase these days, read the room. Right? When you come into a room, what is that? What's the atmosphere? What's the aura of that room? There's a time to hold back. There's a time to step forward. There's a time to speak up. There's a time to be silent. There's a time to laugh. There's a time to be solemn. So timing is important, and it was going to be for Ruth. But even with that, the next thing is bold moves. There does come a time to take a risk. One of the big presentations that we had at the Urban Ministry Conference, started on Thursday night, was with Steve Clore, who talked about the bold move of taking a risk, as when Peter got out of the boat to walk on the water with Jesus Christ. There comes a time to get out of our comfort zone, to make a bold move, to walk on the water, and to take that risk. And then there's trust, because notice that Naomi trusted that Boaz was going to act responsibly. Naomi told Ruth, you do the things I've told you, and then Boaz will tell you what to do. And it is evident she had some trust in Boaz and his integrity and his character, that he would handle this situation well. And also, then there's trust with Ruth to Naomi. You can see where Ruth might say, I don't know about this plan. But Ruth said, everything that you've told me, I'll do. And so she was showing her trust there. Time to go. We didn't get to much to our word studies, but we're going to be talking more about Hesed and Redeemer as our study continues.